Now let's get into the individual section. Quantitative reasoning. The number one tip that I actually got from like Chev Does Med, I'll link her channel below, is actually buying like a mechanical keyboard. So purely for sort of the number pad on the right. And I don't know if you guys played mathletics, you know, back in the day, but this is literally like the closest thing to mathletics that I can think of. Like, no, it's not as like speedy. It's not like just basic, like addition, subtraction, and stuff. But it is sort of like very basic math. I know that's all relative, but I mean the website kind of says like how much time you have to answer how many questions. But I did feel like when I sat the exam, I didn't have too much time to sort of like go back to review all the questions. So I think it was in 24 minutes you had to answer 36 questions, if I'm not wrong. So QR was something that I scored 880 out of 900. And there's also a table that I will, there's actually this table which is from Medic Portal, which is super helpful in terms of like your preparation to understand like what sort of raw scores. Because whenever I like the UCAT, everyone will keep talking about their cognitive score, which means absolutely nothing, except for the fact that, like for me, there's three scores you'll be talking about. There'll be like the raw scores out of like how many questions in the exam. There's the cognitive score, and then there's a percentile. So a lot of people just care about like the percentile, the cognitive score. Quite frankly, I kind of like drilled it all the way back to the actual raw score because like that's what you can kind of control, if that makes sense. So yeah, basically I think out of like 36 questions, I would have answered like, to get 880 out of 900, I would have gotten only like one or two, maybe three wrong max. And again, this table sort of gives you like an indicative estimate of sort of what raw scores you should be aiming for in your practice exams or drills. So I think, yeah, for QR, like the number one tip is just practicing with a mechanical keyboard. It doesn't have to be like all the way, but like as you approach the exam, like I think like, yeah, Shivani recommends like to do it once or twice, just so that you're familiar and to be like really quick at it as well, because it does pay dividends. All right, so abstract reasoning. So this section I was probably most worried about because I wasn't like scoring that well in the practice sessions, and I'd always just like everyone says, oh, there's only so many patterns that you can sort of be tested on, but I always just felt like there was, obviously like a new pattern that I just couldn't see. There is like this acronym which I will put up here because I actually forgot it, but that is pretty helpful. And a lot of people recommend, and something that I did do was have like a mistakes book. So whenever I couldn't find a pattern, you just keep a log of it. And that way you sort of like build this bank of patterns, different ways like that you can actually log it, like whether it's super simple, whether it's like a shape, a color, scans was the mnemonic. So shape, color, arrangement, numbers, and size. Shape and size, I could mix those up, but those are essentially like the five. That's like a framework, I guess you can use, but there's obviously like multiple patterns sometimes, and ultimately it's like, and it's just consistency at the end of the day. Like once you do that sort of every day, looking at just like a subset of questions, and funnily enough, with again, like if you thought QR was sort of like a speed test, AR is like insane. Like when I first saw it, it was like 55 questions in 13 minutes. But keep in mind that like most questions, they have like a set of 5. So once you know the pattern, you can answer like 5 questions straight. And yeah, so like if you think about it that way, you have like roughly 8 patterns plus a couple others in 13 minutes. So it's roughly, the way I looked at it wasn't like, oh, like, I mean, I'm not even going to do the math, but it was, for me, like 1 minute, one pattern. So if you spent like, and the I guess the advice that a lot of people give is that if you don't get the pattern like within sort of like 15 seconds, just move on, because you can always come back. And that's what I did in the exam. And again, I think I got 860 out of 900, which meant that I think I only like missed like one set of patterns. So I probably got like low 50s or like high 40s out of 55. And it was really clutch. Like I think had I not sort of had enough time, and had I not done like that sort of skipping exercise, and again, like when I started out, I was like not like finishing the exam in time. I would just like guess. But then closer to the exam, like you would finish like 13 minutes actually, then you suddenly feel like it's quite long, and you can split through it within like 6-7 minutes, and then you have like the second half to go through the ones that you can get. And had it not been for that, I probably would have gotten like much lower, because it was only sort of like in the last minute where like I quickly figured out a pattern, and then like boom, like five questions I just like clicked, and like when it clicks, it just yeah, you can then speed through it. So that's sort of my advice for abstract reasoning. I think like lumosity, like if you think about like which section lumosity practice actually comes into play, it probably is this one. But yeah, in saying that, I think for me, I personally like quite enjoyed like quantitative reasoning and abstract reasoning, like preparing for it, and that kind of that kind of like showed on the day. Like those were like by far my best sections. I only sort of lost 60, and I lost majority of my marks in verbal reasoning and decision making. So when it came to percentiles, I think I was like in the 99th percentile or 100th percentile for like QR and AR, and then decision making was like mid 80s, and then yeah, we don't talk about verbal reasoning, but in saying that, verbal reasoning is typically like everyone's lowest section, so like the raw score like doesn't really matter, but I just found that it was like lowly distributed. So like if you got 670, you would be like in the 90th percentile, whereas like that just wouldn't cut it in QR. Yeah, that is I guess a snippet of each of the sections. Now, situational judgment testing, SJT. I did not do a single drill for that in Metafy. As soon as I figured out that I guess the university that I was applying for or interested in did not look at it, and I think just like obviously do your research in terms of which universities look at it, but I think majority like don't, and like everyone just says like you just have to be kind of a sane person to score decently well in SJT, and yeah, I think I scored like in the 90th percentile for that, so if they did look at it, it wouldn't have been so bad, but yeah, SJT does not form part of your like cognitive score out of 3,600, so I wouldn't worry too much about it, but like people recommend books and stuff like just to understand like the basic ethic principles, so I never did that personally, but again, I'll put a image of the book up here. Cool. So I know I didn't go through decision making, but decision making is essentially just problem solving. There's I'll just recommend this guy's channel because he actually explains like the different like types of questions that are tested in decision making, which is actually like a relatively new section in the UCAT. If I think about like the UK version. So yeah, now quickly the comparisons between UMAT and UCAT. So if you like flunked the UMAT, which like surprisingly wiped out like a lot of interested and eligible candidates. Like I know like the school that I went to, the day of the UMAT was basically like a public holiday because nobody would be at school, and yeah, like everyone was pretty much gunning for that. But then like only like 10 or so would actually like get a competitive score, like get an interview and get in and stuff. So and like when I say 10, that's like 5%. So the UMAT was just like one of those exams that people say like you couldn't study for it. And yeah, so quickly, the UMAT was like 3 hours, as I said. There were 3 sections. The first section was like comprehension, which again, I'll just do the comparisons as I go. So that is the closest thing to verbal reasoning, and I did not do well in either of those. Section 2 was like, I just remember it as like the empathy section. So it's very much, I guess the closest thing to like situational judgment testing, funnily enough, but it was also like, yeah, a lot of verbal reasoning. So a lot of like reading comprehension. And again, so like 2 out of the 3 sections I like were already like my weak spots. And then when it came to section 3, that was like pattern recognition. So that was like not really tit for tat for abstract reasoning, but the closest thing to that. So you notice that it was like the UMAT, sorry, was a majority like verbal reasoning and like patterns. Abstract reasoning. So there was no like decision making or problem solving. Like that is like completely new. And then there wasn't really any like quantitative reasoning. So if you were like good at maths in school, which like the majority of my school was, you just like weren't sort of rewarded in the UMAT. And I can't make a bet or anything, but if anyone in my school, if anyone I knew that sat the UMAT, sat the UCAT, they would like see a significant improvement. I think it had, yes, obviously like a bit to do with like the preparation, but I would say the majority of it was just a matter of like which test do you test well in. And that's a concept that like a lot of people, or like I personally did not, it didn't click with me. Like I think a lot of people that try to get into medicine, like they'll just disregard the UMAT or the UCAT once they've sort of like finished school, once they've like started their undergraduate degree, because then they sort of get like funneled or channeled or pushed to do like the GAMSAT. But again, the GAMSAT is just like so different to the UCAT, and like I might talk about that in another video. But I think like definitely play to your strengths. Like if you're good, basically if you're good at maths, like I don't think you need to be good at maths, but if you're like a numbers person, then the UCAT, like you will do fine. Um, Obviously in certain sections. So, but I would say like that quantitative ability like definitely translates into decision making. Um, so yeah, like I think this is not like a motivational video to sit the UCAT. I think if you're watching this, you've already probably like registered for the UCAT, or you know you're gonna sit it in July of maybe 2022 or whatever year after that. But I would say yeah, that's kind of my tips on each section. Now, in terms of mindset, so my biggest fear was that I was gonna do like, even if I was doing really well in all the practice exams and like all the drills, I just felt like on the day like something would go wrong, and in 90 minutes, or like, you know, in each sort of subsection which goes by so quickly, I would just sort of like freeze or like, you know, get super nervous. So um, I actually like a week out from the UCAT, I like did a slow burn, so I wasn't like pushing myself to churn through as many questions as I could. So I kind of took it easy. I kind of just like, you know, trusted like everything I did. But yeah, test day nerves. I think if you talk to like any athlete, that's probably a bad reference. What I'm trying to say is like, I'm not saying like you have to be an athlete to sit the UCAT, but I think it's a similar sort of mindset. So athletes obviously like they train for years and years and years for like the Olympics, or like, you know, for a 100-meter sprint, and then, you know, the race is done in like 9 seconds. But obviously it's not about those 9 seconds. It's about like you know, the iceberg beneath, like, you know, sea level of preparation that you've done. So that's kind of just like something to keep in mind, like knowing that like it's just you just sort of get into sort of muscle memory. Like I knew after you get into the rhythm of things, like things just started like, I don't know, all that practice like does pay off. I'm not very good at explaining like how that works, but yeah, just trust that like if you put in the effort, it will play out. Like you will be rewarded on game day, and that's kind of just what I kept telling myself as well. Because yeah, like your marks do fluctuate as you practice, and then you sort of just wonder like, oh, what if like on the day, and this exam is only like once every year, and like admission cycles are only once every year, like, you know, that you just can't think about that stuff. So I'm just saying it as someone that was in that same boat. The lighting is super good, but it's also really hot, which is kind of why I'm filming today. I'm also getting a haircut tomorrow, so I wasn't sure how that would turn out. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm filming. Oh yeah, just quickly, the UCAT, and just to clarify, the UCAT in the UK is no different to the UCAT in Australia. So like we just call it UCAT ANZ just because like it's Australia and New Zealand, but there is no difference. I think when you like sign up on Medify, like it's the same sort of resources that people use for both exams. So yeah, I think good luck if you're sitting the UCAT in the next few months. I mean, in July of 2022 or whenever you're watching this. And yeah, like, take care. See you in the next video.